Episode 11. You can't taste the difference between shit and french fries.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to an entirely new, totally enticing, new, bogus, I don't know what, psyched out week. Welcome to the already third week, 11th episode of the very best podcast in the world, your source for personal superiority through health, wealth, and happiness. My God, I'm going to get the hang of this someday, I think. Are you grateful? I hope so. After the exercise, I did read through my emails. I did get a tidbit of feedback already. Looking forward to receiving quite a few emails more about how it turned out for you. And I hope this exercise was worth your while, and hope that you moved forward a bit in trying to find out what you are born into, really, what pristine life, I guess. More likely than not, you're healthy. More likely than not, you're going to have a roof over your head, and more likely than not, you're going to have some sort of more or less expensive device to listen to this podcast. So what's missing from your life? What's something where you can improve? And in essence, what are you missing in your life that's something where, you can actually advance yourself to achieve that goal. So I promised you an interesting episode for this week based upon the introduction, the teaser I made on Friday with this episode about the gratitude deal. If you haven't listened to it, it's episode number 10, where it was an exercise episode like pretty much every Friday, which was called 5 Minutes of Gratitude. And if you haven't listened to it, go to it. If you found it interesting, remember to send some feedback. Now, this episode was based upon a discussion I had with a distant neighbor person that I run across regularly. And they were, in essence, complaining about how much they hated their life and how unfair life was towards them, which I didn't entirely agree with because they have a nice roof over their head. They have a job that they're pretty much unfireable from, if there is even such a word. They've got food on the table. They've got more money than they actually need. Not fuck you money, but they're making a good living, a very, very, very decent living. And they were complaining about, small things that life just tosses in your way to trip you and to basically refocus you on what's actually important. And these lessons obviously failed for this person, which is why I'm really dedicating an episode. And I know the title, You Can't Taste the Difference Between Shit and French Fries, is rather provocative. Those of you who are a bit familiar with movies are probably going to immediately know that it's from Black Hawk Down and taken a little bit out of context, but provocative enough to make a point. The point being that, we in the Western world do complain a lot, and actually more than we should, And if we don't have anything to complain about, boy, there's the news to complain about, or boy, there's the neighbors to complain about. And in essence, I want to put into perspective, as someone who has seen really other places of the world, and a lot of shitholes among those, but also very pristine places where you were exposed to poverty. And in both of these places, those people, of all of us, should be the ones complaining about how shitty life is treating them, right? Probably one of the prime examples was when I was working for a very, very, very large bank in Europe. I'm not going to go into details because I don't know if it violates my NDA. And more often than not, well, you have to. I'm going to have to give you a visual to really outline the contrast between that I'm trying to convey. So we walked into the building every morning, right? There was marble everywhere. There were armed security guards every day, 24/7. Nobody was working there at night. But, you got to protect the palace, right? Could be that rioters come along during the night all jacked up trying to take your bank apart, even though there was probably not more than 50,000 euros or dollars in the ATM machine downstairs, because it's all digits nowadays. And you walk into this pristine entry hall, I don't know, probably about 3 stories high. And it was luxury all over. It was immaculate. The floor was swept pretty much every 3 to 4 hours. I would go out for a smoke pretty much on the hour. And every 3 to 4 hours, I would see some foreigner mopping the marble. This place was just luxury all over. So you walked in, I don't know, maybe about 100, 150 meters, 300, 400 yards for all of us English-speaking people out there. And then we would take a left, go through our entry gate, and we would walk into what was, I don't know, the elevator hall, if you will. There were, I think it was 6 elevators. Also, with your golden or brass-colored doors. However, there was a window looking outside, and behind this window on the outside was a ventilation shaft. And on this ventilation shaft, if you were in early enough, you would see at least one bum on a piece of cardboard sleeping there. And the contrast was just so freaking stark that I had to take a picture of it just to believe it and to show other people. Now, one of the security dudes saw me take the picture and was adamant about me deleting it, so I pretended to delete it, but I just had to keep this for the collection because it was just so startling to see that. And where there's one, there's about a gazillion other stories that I lived through. And probably another one that was very interesting was when I worked in Southeast Asia, or the east of me, of Europe. More often than not, I would fly with Emirates, and really great airline. And Dubai is as fascinating as it is. It's just built on slave labor of really poor assholes from very poor parts of the world, like Bangladesh and Pakistan and all of these other places, and they're being ass raped, and building these high rises, this dream city, really, in unhuman conditions. I mean, every Westerner is gonna be looking to not be exposed to the sun and get to the next place where there's air conditioning, because the conditions there are so grueling, and yet you seldomly get the chance to reflect upon that these marvelous architecturally daring, bold buildings were built somehow in the scorching desert sun, more often than not exceeding 45 degrees Celsius. 50 degrees Celsius is not seldom there either. And the climate isn't really deserty climate because it's not as dry. It's got a relatively high humidity because it's just close to the ocean. So just walking from one building to another can drench you in sweat. And these poor souls work there 12, 13, 14 hours a day so that in essence they can send the money that they make, the shitty money that they make for the conditions they work in, home to their families and wherever it is to give them a decent living. And more often than not, it's not just not going to be their direct dependents, but it's going to be their entire fucking family of 20, 30, 40 people relying on this income. And, if that's not motivation enough, you're going to have these asshole companies that these people work for who confiscate their passports upon arrival, so that there is no way that they can get the fuck out of the place without having to get ass raped by their bosses to get the permission to leave the country and go back home. And that's not it, really. It doesn't stop there. It gets better. I worked for another company in Southeast Asia, and they were building another resort. And they had Bangladeshis hired to do the construction labor, which, similar climatic surroundings, shitty conditions to work under. Not that, it was cold. You can dress against the cold, but you can't dress against the warmth. There's only so much clothes you can take off. And they had these people sleeping on straw mats in a container, in one of these overseas containers. What are they? No idea, honestly. I would have to look up the dimensions of an overseas container, but you get the picture, right? And so they had 30 people sleeping in this in this container, and you would expect from somebody working remotely, so far away from home, and under these conditions, that they were well paid and well treated, and they were not. It was like, I think they got about $300 a month. They had a guarantee that they could go home anytime, but again, passport was confiscated upon arrival. Well, not confiscated. They called it, of course, differently. I think they said they'll preserve it. They'll put it in a safe for security reasons so that it doesn't get lost, right? And yeah, they didn't pay them a lot of money, obviously, because they were only eating these bagged noodles, and I don't know how they worked in these treacherous conditions for so many hours a day and only got, it was essentially work and sleep, really, honestly. So, with that type of work you do, you probably need your at least 6 hours, more likely 8 hours of sleep. And then there's only so much time in the day left that you can actually work. And they were exploited for that time. They had maybe, 20, 30 minutes of lunch. Of course, they weren't provided. Keep in mind, this was a hotel outfit. They were, not fed the leftovers from the kitchen that was dumped. It was like they had to survive on their bagged noodles, and they didn't have real access to the market, so they couldn't get any vegetables. Of course, they would work 7 days a week, and so on and so forth. The point I'm trying to make is, you're doing pretty fucking good. So stop complaining. I don't know what situation you're in, but I tried to kind of outline it, that there are 3 main pillars in life that I found out to be really the most important. And that's your health and access to adequate health treatment, medical treatment. Number 2 is the wealth aspect. And in that, I'm not trying to imply that you should have millions or billions, because there's a lot of people out there that are comfortable monetarily in the situation that they're in, like myself. And it's not about having the fuck you money. It's having a stable income. It's having a good job that pays you well. If you aspire more, go for it. That's your decision, but you're in more likely than not in the position to make that choice. These people are not. They're getting, hired / kidnapped in their countries and made false promises because they don't know how it is in the other parts of the world. They don't have access to qualified media. And so they get tricked into going to a foreign country to work their ass off, to jeopardize their health. There's a lot of deaths there from the weather they're exposed to while working there, and the money they earn is barely enough to feed their entire family. And again, it's not only their spouse and maybe the kids. It's grandma and grandpa, and it's aunt and uncle and whatnot. Just because they've got a little bit of qualification, that gets them access to this kind of job because they're more often than not pretty good handymen, and they get paid not thousands of dollars, but if at all, it's hundreds. And they're just being ass raped all over the planet. And, we're talking about Black Lives Matter and how slavery used to be an issue and historically and yibbity yacht. Slavery is real, and it's real today. It's just, comes under a different label, still same concept, really. Now, what's the point I'm trying to make? I think I outlined that quite clearly. That, there's the happiness aspect that I just forgot. And happiness is just what you make of it, what you are, happy about. It's very difficult to determine what each and every person's level of happiness that they want to attain really is. But in Europe, for instance, we complain about a 2-minute power outage because the internet is gone. Yeah, it's a valid case. We've become so reliant on this, what is it? Our external brain that, we don't keep track of pretty much anything without our fancy devices. Are pretty much fucked. And in other parts of the world, that's the most fucking normal thing to have a power outage at least once a day. And what do the people do? Well, they carry on with working, or they have meetings, they adapt to the situation. And I've been in a lot of countries where this was the most normal thing in the world. One of my first exposures, and I'm used to probably the most stable power network on the planet here in Germany. Things just don't, the power doesn't go out. It just doesn't fucking happen. It's never happened. And I don't know how many years I would have to look back that has actually happened to me and that I was really aware of it. And I worked on a project. This was with the first company I founded, Deutsche Web Design, which specialized on using advanced technologies to create very modern and very sleek and very technically advanced websites. And I outsourced part of the programming work to this dude in India. And he was a very trustworthy guy, and we worked together quite frequently. And we were on a deadline for a project, and I'll never forget this. And I was sitting somewhere else. The client was breathing down my neck while I was haggling with another client about a project that I desperately wanted. And the client keeps calling me saying, what about the deadline? You're going to miss it. You're going to skip it. And I was like, where's this guy? So I tried calling him over Skype. I tried calling him through all of the sent him emails, sent him text messages, called his Indian phone number from my cell plan. And this wasn't, this was probably like 2002, 2003, something like that. or maybe a bit later, but it was insanely expensive to call overseas with a cell phone plan. And I finally got a hold of him like half a day later, and I was shouting at him. I was really, really pissed because obviously they're a few hours ahead, and he hadn't received the instructions because they have a power outage there pretty much every Thursday. That's what he said, and I was like, wait, that doesn't fly. Don't lie to me. And he was like, no, here's a link. So check this. It's the most normal thing in the world. And I was like, well, how do you carry on working? How do the shops refrigerate? And he was like, well, we're prepared. We have generators for that. It's normal. They kick in when the power goes out. And I was like, dude, it's like, I need a heads up on shit like this. So we did manage to renegotiate the deadline with the customer and so on and so forth. So everything went well. But from a perspective that, if the power were to go out in Germany, I'd be on the phone probably within a minute to the electricity supplier and say, look, dudes, what's going on here? And it's not like that I live in the city. I live in really butt-fuck Germany, like the last place. Nobody's going to find me here if they're not desperately looking, right? But I'd be really, really, really shitting kittens. And this dude was in a big city in India. I'm not going to reveal the name because it'd probably be, through my social connections, be revealable who this guy is. And it's just interesting, the level of taking things for granted we have reached is just out there. Another example I just recently went through is we bought this Dyson vacuum cleaner, and it broke during the warranty time. So I made a warranty claim, and the guy I had on the phone, after 55 minutes of putting me on hold, was like, oh yeah, I'm going to send it out today. It's going to be there probably Wednesday. Well, come Thursday, it's, no, he said it's going to be there Wednesday at the latest. So more likely Tuesday. So come Thursday, no package. Mailman went through. I asked the mailman, do you have a package? And he was like, no. So I was like, what? Why? And it was like, so normal for for a country with good logistics and good mail services and networks that you have your package the next fucking day. It's like with Amazon Prime, same deal. You order, it's going to be there the next day. They guarantee it. And it's just, you get so used to this, everything being interlinked, everything working like clockwork, that whenever you get thrown out of the curve, it's like you get totally agitated and really pissed because it doesn't happen like always, and there's no guarantee that it should. The amount of work that goes into, really putting a logistical chain like this together is fucking artwork. And, there is no reason to complain, because whether or not, whether I get my vacuum cleaner today or at the end of the week, it doesn't make a fucking difference. I can use a broom. It's like at the end of the day, you can work around it, you can circumvent problems, you can adapt to situations. And I think that's another factor which we in the West have really, 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 really forgotten. And on the other hand, we're complaining about refugees, entering Europe and the United States seeking a better life. When, it's for us, it's like, why would they want to come here? We have such a shitty life, everything is so expensive and we're paying so much taxes. Well, fuck yeah, because everything just works. It's like I mentioned in the other episode, in Germany, there's legislature that you have to have an ambulance at your doorstep in 12 minutes. Go back to the episode. I go into a little bit more detail. And this is really in the interest of saving the people who are having a heart attack, because after this and that much time, their just starts to attack other organs as well if the heart fails. And so somebody came up with the idea to implement legislation that you have to have an ambulance at your doorstep in 12 minutes. And boy, does that cost a lot of fucking money to guarantee a service like that, because there's legislation for it. I don't know what an ambulance goes for, but every ambulance does have to have a garage. Every garage has to have maintenance. Every ambulance has to have a driver and a nurse and another nurse, and there's got to be dispatch and whatnot. This operation could easily, this piece of legislation, sorry, wrong wording, can easily end up costing the taxpayer quite a few $100 million a year. I haven't run the estimates, but it's in the millions, very easily in the 2-digit millions. And the power grid that you sit on costs shitload of money to maintain. Not that the power companies are ass rapists. They are probably the biggest ones on the planet. But, they're doing a pretty good job in, keeping electricity in the house. It's just, to make everything that we have work. And I dare you, to take out the main line breaker in your house and see how long you can survive without getting totally pissed off, because you are so reliant on all of the Western amenities that we take for granted, and which a lot of the close to 8 billion people on the planet don't have. So I would like to say, shut the fuck up, take a step back, and the next time you get pissed about these small things that go wrong, take a step back and really refocus on whether it's actually worth it, or whether you can adapt to a small, minute interference in your everyday life. Because there are a lot of people, and even closer than you think, who would kill to live a life like you're living, because they are in a much shittier situation than you are. And, it was just another very interesting example. This was a few years ago, when I hadn't met my better half. I was in Russia. And so it was like the Russian Tinder experience is just so insanely interesting. I talked to, it's the dishwasher, by the way, making noise, because I'm sitting in front of the fireplace because I'm comfy at 25 degrees Celsius, because it's 10 outside. And so, so long story short. And I was in Russia, and, I'm anything but attractive, I think. And I had... just, for shits and giggles, installed Tinder, because that was the time that you had Tinder on your phone. And the amount of matches that I got was insane, and I talked to one of the ladies that was there. She was Russian, but she'd spent a lot of her life in England. And she was like, yeah, they're all fucking desperate to get the hell out of here. Because, their life here is okay, but anywhere else is better, because the standard of living for them and the chances for having a good career and, maybe a decent husband are slim to none, because, a lot of the people around here are drunks, and getting one of the rich guys is close to impossible. And living in the West is, much more interesting and much more appealing to them. So long story short, I was like, oh, okay. And now these weren't the ugliest girls. They were, it was just insanely interesting to see the amount of matches that you were getting. And and, this was not like your Russian gibberish being sent there in the messages that you could afterwards. This was good English. They were very well educated, very good looking. And it was like, okay, this is really, really, really an interesting experience. So that being said, how do we sum this thing up? And I'm anything but certain that I will, because now, and I haven't been for pretty much 5 years, traveling regularly. It's like you lose your sight on the negative things, on the negative experiences that you've made very quickly, and you adapt into your normal surrounding with the reliability of, your heating working, your air condition working, and so on and so forth, very, very, very quickly. And I think what I'm going to try to call out is just to what I said earlier. Take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and ask yourself whether you're complaining on a high level, and whether you are actually capable of tasting the difference between shit and French fries. Because I think a lot of us haven't really been exposed to very difficult situations, meaning, severe health issues and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of us didn't have the times when they didn't have food in the fridge and didn't know where to go. And one of the, primary concerns in entrepreneurships is just that, it's like one of the most stupid decisions entrepreneurs make is, shit, I'm going to go self-employed. I'm going to found my own company. And then they're like, oh shit, I need customers. And that's what happened to me in the young years. And actually there was a situation where I didn't have food in the fridge and I had no idea where to get it. So, it was like being an entrepreneur, one part of the day, and the other part of the day was working odd jobs just to, make ends meet. And until I had figured that bit out, situations came which I don't want to ever experience again in my life, because again, I wasn't used to them. I was born into a family where, we weren't rich or anything, but there was a significant amount of stability. My parents are married still today. I don't know for what, the 200th year, probably, the way they are with each other. And what I didn't know was unpaid bills or, due notices for payments or whatever. That's something that I wasn't really familiar with. And experiencing that for the first time is difficult. Trying to deal with it because you've never been exposed to it is even more difficult. And going to your dad and saying, I need money, that's the most difficult part of life. And one of the shitty things that you just want to avoid. So that being said, I guess two core things really stand out. Number one is take a step back, look at how bad you are actually doing. And the next time somebody complains to you about how bad they're presumably doing, send them a link to this episode and tell them you ain't doing bad at all. Number two, and which has been very important to my development, was the travels. And I don't mean the travels where you book a journey to some destination, stay in a hotel, go to the beach, that kind of setup. I mean, take a fucking backpack, book a flight, and go. And look at all of the stories, all of the adventures that the world has in it for you. Look for those by yourself. Don't let a travel agent do it, because they will only send you to the good parts of town. They won't show you the shitty parts or have you get even close to it. And in these shitty parts or close to them, you actually learn, and you learn the really, really, really interesting stuff of life. As soon as it's possible, but again, because we're all going to die of this terrible virus that's going around, but when that's over, right? In that sense, I wish you a Merry Christmas in less than 3 months, and a good night or a good day, depending on where you actually are on the planet. And hope that you are successful, and then I will hear you again tomorrow for the next episode. In that sense, if you have any feedback, please relay it to me me, to the very best podcast in the world at gmail.com. And I'll try and wrap my head around it and actually improve this podcast even further to make it even more awesome. Have a good night. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.